So on behalf of the Tools for Life Learning Center here at Loudoun Habitat for Humanity, I'd like to welcome you to today's virtual workshop entitled, I Want to Volunteer, Now What? My name is Amanda Bollig, and I'm the Program Project Specialist here at Loudoun Habitat. I oversee the Tools for Life Learning Center and our home repair program. So with that, we will jump right into today's goals because I know there's a lot of stuff to discuss. First, we're going to talk about what is National Volunteer Month, and if you didn't know, it's going on right now. Then we'll talk about some of the benefits of volunteering and hopefully encourage you to get out and volunteer. And then we'll wrap things up with giving you some tools that you can use to get connected to the perfect volunteer opportunity for you. All right, joining us today, we have two guests. Valerie Pisierra is the Executive Director at Loudoun Cares, and she is the expert in all things nonprofit related. So we are very excited to have her here with us. We also have our very own Kathy Martin. She's the Resource Development Specialist here at Loudoun Habitat for Humanity, and she handles all things volunteer related. So we're very excited to have her join us as well. Thank you, ladies.
Thanks for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Thank you.
Me as well. Thank you for asking me to join.
All right. If you have questions for Valerie or for Kathy during the course of the presentation, you can use the chat box to put those questions in, but we're not going to answer them until the end of the presentation. We'll have a little slide up and we'll go over all the questions that you guys have. So we're going to get started with our very first question. And this one is for you, Valerie. What is National Volunteer Month?
Well, so National Volunteer Month, a lot of people believe that the whole volunteer movement started with President Bush with his 100 or 1,000 points of light speech. However, it actually started in 1974 with President Nixon, and he created the National Volunteer Week. And so he was encouraging people to go out in their community and find ways to give back and volunteer. And then in 1991, President Bush created Points of Light, which is now a nonprofit organization that connects nonprofits with tools to help engage volunteers. So the month of April is the month we honor our volunteers for all the work. We know that volunteering goes on all year round, and we just want a special month to tell them thank you and encourage them to get out into the community and find new ways to give back.
Thank you, Valerie. And then Kathy, would you mind just saying how we celebrate our volunteers here at Loudoun Habitat?
Sure. All next week, we have some very special posts planned on our Facebook page that will highlight some of our volunteers and the work that they have done this past year. So I invite you to check it out.
Very good. All right. So we know what National Volunteer Month is. So why should we volunteer? Valerie, do you want to talk about some of the benefits that the organization actually receives from volunteers?
Sure, of course. So nonprofits rely so much on volunteers. Some nonprofits are actually all volunteer based. They don't have any paid staff, but about 90% of all nonprofits use volunteers in one capacity or another. They use volunteers for their current services. They use them to expand their programs to create a bigger bandwidth and bigger capacity. It really is an efficient use of their resources. So when they get funding from donors or grants, they like to know that that they're using volunteers for some of that to be able to help, keep those costs down. They use volunteers all the time come in. We have a volunteer who is looking at helping us develop a family volunteering program. So it was their idea and they're like, hey, I'm going to help you develop it. And I was like, yeah, that's great. So volunteers are really great for expanding and developing new programs. They help us raise funds. Of course, volunteers are used in fundraising all the time. They're used for events, to help with events, run events. Help to do fundraising for the organization, like the Run the Greenway event, right, is based on fundraisers for the different nonprofits that are doing that on May 1st. They help the nonprofits keep their costs down. And basically they just, really allow the organizations to serve more people and do more things in the community by by utilizing volunteers in all these different capacities, whether it's a one-day event, it's operations, it's direct service, it's board service, or it's skilled labor. So they're helping with websites, they're helping with IT, they're helping with marketing and all those kinds of things. So volunteers are really, really important to the nonprofits, not only everywhere, but especially here in Loudoun.
Do you have an example you can give us of maybe an organization that has benefited from having volunteers?
Yeah, so Sprouts Therapeutic Writing is one organization who uses a lot of volunteers. They use them to do their classes with, work with the horses, take care of the horses. If anyone's been around horses, they know how much work they are. So one of the great benefits of having volunteers coming in is that they get to learn about the population that the nonprofit serves. And then once you learn about the population, you understand what the need is, then you want to do more. And so in this case, Alex was a college student who needed to do some service hours. He was required to do like 20 hours or something like that. And he was able to connect with Sprouts Therapeutic Writing. But once he actually got in with the organization and learned their mission and learned their population and what they were doing, he was so excited and so motivated that he stayed on with them. And he has been one of their best volunteers. And so that organization was able to then rely on those volunteers, the ones that come back once they learn about what they're doing. And so I think a lot of nonprofits really love volunteers who want to come back over and over again, rather than just a one-time, I want to volunteer and then move on. So although there's volunteer opportunities for every kind of volunteer, whether it's short-term or long-term, but this is one good example of how the organization has benefited from having a volunteer that stays with them.
I know repeat volunteers are just valued so highly, especially in our nonprofit. We love when we get people that keep coming back and want to help us. This is an example of that. Kathy, can you talk about some of the personal benefits to volunteering?
Sure. Here's just a few to highlight. For example, it's an opportunity for you to invest your passion and life experiences to make a lasting impact. It's a great way to meet new people, build relationships, learn new skills. And it's also a way to have a sense of purpose and to build your self-confidence and your self-esteem. It can also be helpful to combat depression and stress, and introduces you sometimes to different ways of life. It makes you feel good, and most importantly, it can be a lot of fun.
Yes, it is a lot of fun. I know I was out on the job site this day when the group of volunteers and the picture was there, and it was a lot of fun to get to build that little porch that they're standing on for the homeowner. Do you have another example you can tell us about of one of our volunteers?
Sure. Brian Caramella started volunteering with us to help his friends that were in our future homeowner pipeline. They had to do a certain number of sweat equity hours. So he volunteered to come out, help out on the construction site, to help them with those hours. He loved it so much, and he had the right skill set as well, that he moved up to be a volunteer crew leader, and he continues to do so to this day. And as an aside, kind of to relate to his personal life, when COVID hit and he found himself working from home, he took his existing skill set plus the skills he learned as a crew lead with us, and he transformed his basement into his own workshop. So that was pretty cool.
That is a great example. I know I've met Brian, and he does wonderful work for us out on our job sites.
Yes, he does.
Now we're going to jump into some of the impact that we've seen from volunteering. So Valerie, can you talk about the impact that you've seen for kind of Loudoun County as a whole, since you have a much larger reach over all the nonprofits?
Yeah, so we have a volunteer center where we have about 235 local nonprofits that are on the center. And although it is not the only way that people can connect with nonprofits in Loudoun County, we do see a lot of action on that center. Over COVID, surprisingly enough, the volunteer opportunities we're few and far between for volunteers. However, we still were able to connect 1,700 volunteers. And so that's still a lot of volunteers when a lot of organizations were pulling back on having live volunteers there. I think the organizations are starting to find more creative ways to use volunteers, virtual home kits, things like that outside. Now that the weather's good out here in Loudoun, the farms and stuff and such will be able to, but that impact, I mean, if you look at for every hour that a volunteer gives in Virginia, the impact value is about $28.46, something like that, or 98 cents, something like that. So if you multiply that by the number of hours that they give, it can go into the millions for the impact value for these nonprofits in Loudoun. We have a lot of small grassroots nonprofits, and they really rely on volunteers. Virginia itself, the most recent data that we have from Serve, from the Serve government Serve website is 2018, and Virginia ranked 22nd. So they were had a 34% volunteer rate in Virginia, and that was $5.5 billion. So you can see volunteering is a huge industry, if you want to call it that, and they're doing a lot of great work for a lot of great nonprofits.
And that is a huge number to see, and it ties directly into what you said previously on keeping the costs low for the nonprofits so they can continue to operate. That's a price tag on what those volunteers were able to give back and do in Virginia. So that's awesome. Can you explain a little bit about some of the other volunteers that you've seen here in Loudoun County?
Yeah, so we see a lot of volunteers that, we work with the nonprofits and they contact us with different needs, or they say, we need help with this, or we're looking for that. And so we've had things like, Veterans Giving Back. They train service dogs for veterans, Farm Less Ordinary. They grow produce for our food banks. Of course, Habitat for Humanity and different organizations, Tree of Life. I mean, I can't name all 235 that we work with, but there's so much out there, ranging everything from health and human services, environmental, working with animals, working with children, up to seniors. And so there's a lot to choose from. And it's just a matter of connecting with your passion and what you maybe want to learn a new skill, or maybe you want to work with kids because you love working with kids, or you want to work with animals because you love working with animals. So there's a lot of different, like I said, organizations in Loudoun itself to work with.
So it sounds like some of those personal volunteer or personal benefits that Kathy mentioned would help tie into you choosing that perfect nonprofit to go and volunteer with, since 235 is a lot to choose from. But if you kind of scroll down that list of what your skills are, what your passion is, that might help narrow it down so you can find the perfect location for you to volunteer at.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes. All right. So Kathy, can you explain some of the impact that we've seen here at the Loudoun affiliate through volunteers?
Absolutely. And just to reiterate what Val said, our organization relies very heavily on volunteer support. We can't do what we do without volunteers. And here we see the impact from the last fiscal year, which, actually also included, part of that was during COVID, when the first half of when COVID started. But we were able to have 5 home dedications, which have an impact on 21 lives. And we did 4 home repairs that impacted 7 lives. We generated 40 workshops that had 144 total attendees. And we also picked up 2,200 donations for the Restore and saved over 400 tons from the landfill. So that's pretty amazing.
That is a lot of impact, even in a year where COVID was happening and it wasn't very easy to get out and do stuff. But I know we've got numbers for this year. Can you talk about those a little bit?
Well, these are the impact numbers for our affiliate since the beginning, which we're coming up on 30 years here being in Loudoun County. And in terms of home ownership, we have been able to dedicate 59 homes to families with an impact of 224 individuals And our home repair program has worked at 13 homes and had a total impact on 26 individuals.
That is awesome. So how do the volunteers at Loudoun Habitat directly impact these numbers?
Well, they are the ones who are out there working on the job sites, doing the construction projects. They are, at the home repair sites, helping to repair homes. They're in the restore, helping to run, to get the donations ready for sale and to help the customers. So all those proceeds from the restore are fed back into our programs. So in every aspect of our affiliate, we have volunteer participation, and it's vital to keep us able to provide the services we are in Loudoun County.
I know you've got one more example here. How has this group of volunteers helped us out?
Well, this is a group of rock stars. These are our homeowner service committee members, and the homeowner service committee provide financial education training for our future homeowners. And then once the future homeowners are in their homes and settled, they are also there to provide financial counseling support during challenging times, like what's happened here with COVID. And this team is a vital component for our home ownership program and being able to provide those services to our community.
That's awesome. Okay, so we've talked about the benefits, we've talked about the impact. I'm hoping people are encouraged to want to get out there and go volunteer. So how can they do that? How can they get connected, Valerie?
So of course, I'm with Loudoun Cares. I would say the first place you should go is our volunteer center. So because we're local, right? So if you go to volunteer.loudouncares.org, you can look at the different agencies that we have on there. Each agency is responsible for their profile. So they're responsible to post their needs for volunteers. So some will have, depending on the time of year, will have different needs. But if you can scroll through there and you can look and see the agencies. And if you find something that you feel connected to, you feel passionate about, their contact information is there. So you can always contact them directly and be like, I notice you don't have any current needs, but do you have other opportunities for volunteers that might be coming up or can I help with something? If you have younger kids, you can search by age, you can search by location to your house and by cause. So it's a very interactive platform. So I would say that would be the first place to look. Secondly, Volunteer Fairfax they don't use the same software or system as we do, but they have their own platform. So if you're closer to the Fairfax area, or you maybe work in Fairfax and want to volunteer after work, then that's another way to look for volunteer opportunities. And then Volunteer Match is a national organization, and so they nonprofits will post on there, and you can put in your zip code, and they'll pull up, filter it by where you live for different opportunities. You can always email me directly if you have any questions as well, and I can try to help connect you.
So it sounds like you could go in there and really filter it down to the exact opportunity that you're looking for. So age, location, your passion, you can just filter it down and get the right match. Well, that's very good to hear. Okay, so zooming in a little bit and directly at Loudoun Habitat, Kathy, how do they get involved with us?
So if you're interested, you should check out our website. You can go to the Volunteer Now tab, and that will bring you to the main volunteer page, where if there are opportunities available, they will be posted there. Right now, we're really restricted with our opportunities, to be honest. So, we're hoping that will improve in the next coming months. So in the meantime, what I really recommend doing is to go to our news section on the website, sign up for our monthly e-news. This will give you once a month an overview of what's happening in general at the affiliate, and also sign up for our weekly construction update. That specifically focuses on the construction activity, as well as will post any volunteer construction opportunities when available. And you can also send me an email directly, and I can answer any questions you may have.
Very good. Okay, can you zoom in even further and talk about some of the specific volunteer opportunities that maybe might come back and be available after we're kind of out of COVID. Because I want to explain to people, or have you explain to people, that sometimes it's more than just getting out there on the construction site. There are other opportunities available.
Exactly. There are more opportunities available other than swinging a hammer. We have, we'll start with swinging a hammer. We do have opportunities for construction volunteers when we open it up to the general population in Loudoun. That's a one-day commitment to come out and help on the construction site. We have a team build program where corporations organize a group of their colleagues to come out on the construction site for one day and help us build. Also, for longer term commitments, we have opportunities to be on one of our committees. We have resource development, advocacy, homeowner services, faith committees, for example. We also rely heavily on those volunteers in the restore, and volunteers in the restore help get the items ready for sale, tidy up the different areas, and also assist customers. We have opportunities for office volunteers for doing data entry, helping with mailings, administrative tasks, etc. And for events, we need volunteers to help us plan and support events throughout the year. And overall, even during COVID, we had almost 4,800 hours that were donated and almost 350 volunteers that made all that happen in the last fiscal year.
That is awesome. Valerie, could you kind of talk a little bit about how some of these opportunities might also be available at other nonprofits, beyond just some of the typical things you might think of when you see a nonprofit? Do they have other opportunities?
I mean, there's opportunities for volunteering on so many levels. There's board service, there's physical labor, there's skilled labor, there can be advocacy, fundraising. I mean, just think of, if you think of, the thing that separates a nonprofit from a for-profit business is really just a tax code. So, we're still a business. We still have so many aspects of our operations that we can use volunteers in. So we use interns. So college students, we use interns for social media and graphic design and to help with office administrative type things. And so it's a great opportunity to get experience, especially if you're in college or you're not really sure what you want to do. Go out and volunteer, because you can end up really finding a passion for something that you didn't even know, and it can send you in a completely different direction. And so don't be afraid to think a little bit more outside the box. There can be drives. They can do, like I said, things at home that they can then deliver to the nonprofit, especially during COVID. And then there's direct service. There's nonprofits that can train you to work directly with the populations that they serve. So it's really just limited to your imagination.
That's a great way to put it. Okay, so with that, we're going to sum things up a little bit, talk about, wrap things up, and really talk about the key points we discussed. And while I'm doing that, think about some questions you might have for our guests. So we talked about what National Volunteer Month actually is. Hopefully that encouraged you to get out and volunteer. We explained some of those benefits to volunteering for you personally and for the organization as well. And then we gave you some resources that you can go and check out to hopefully get you involved in our local community here in Loudoun. So with that, we're going to move into question and answer time. So if you've got a question for Kathy or for Val, you can put it in the chat box now. We've got a couple minutes to go through those. As you're typing in the chat box, I actually have a question for the both of you that hopefully you can answer. You kind of touched on it a little bit, but I want to see if you can expand on some of the safer volunteer opportunities that people could take part in during COVID.
Sure. Like I mentioned earlier, there's those virtual volunteer opportunities. So a lot of that includes like drives for clothing, or diapers are really in need right now for a lot of our families that are suffering from losing jobs or losing hours. So diaper drives, there's clothing drives, there's food drives, of course, but think outside of food, right? What other things do we need? Hygiene items and laundry detergent, sorry. And don't forget about our pets, right? They need food and they need those kinds of things as well. There's also care kits that you can make for the homeless shelter or for the hospice center at Adler Center. They like to get care kits for their hospice patients and families and have cards that they can give to them, or create cards that can be delivered to a senior center. So there's a lot of different ways, tutoring for kids, reading with kids. Think outside the box that way. But as the weather gets nicer, and we're really lucky in Loudoun that we have these different environments, right? We have our kind of our towns and cities, but we also have these wonderful rural areas that have these great farms, and we have a Farm Less Ordinary and Legacy Farms and JK Farming, and they all do farming to give to the food pantries and to families that are in need. And so those are safer ways to volunteer because it's outside and can be socially distanced, as well as keep Loudoun beautiful, right? They do the watershed cleanup. So you go and help and clean up the environment, and you can do that with your little pod and stay safe and stay away from everybody else. So those are some ideas, but again, it's limited to your imagination.
Those are some great opportunities that are still available even during COVID. We do have 2 questions that just came in the chat box. The first one is, are there any age limits to volunteering? Specifically, this person is thinking about if they have a teenager that wants to come out and volunteer.
Yeah, we get that question a lot. And I love that families are wanting to start kids young with volunteering. I've always volunteered, even when my kids were little, and I dragged them along with me. And it really just depends on the nonprofit. So on our particular center, like I said, you can sort by age. You put the age in, and so say you put 15, you'll get only opportunities that come up that either don't have an age limit, or they have an age limit that's, whatever, 13 and above or 15 and above. And again, sometimes it's a matter of calling the agency directly and just asking them, say, hey, I want to volunteer with my 8-year-old. I'm going to be there with them. Do you allow this? And some of them will, and some of them won't. And it has to do with, liability and what the volunteer opportunity is. It's not as safe to have a 3-year-old or a 5-year-old around horses as it is to have a 16 or 17-year-old. So you have to think of it that way. Going down the Potomac in a canoe with a toddler is maybe not a good idea, but a 13-year-old and their parent, that's fine. So they're there together. So you have to think about it that way, and always contact the agency if you have any questions.
Kathy, do you want to jump in and say anything about volunteering for teenagers with our organization?
Sure. So our age requirement out on the construction site and in the restore is 18 years or older. And so in terms of youth opportunities, kind of along the lines, as Val said, it depends on the age, but we have some youth opportunities from time to time. And if you're interested in that in general, contact me directly and I can correspond with you more specifically. But we do have some active high school clubs in Loudoun County. So if your child is a student at a high school that has a club, that's a great way to get involved. And also, for example, we have a Lego contest that we run every year over the winter break, and that's open to a wide range of the age group, and that's fun to participate in.
Yeah, the Lego contest is a lot of fun, and I know we've gotten a lot of assistance from some of our high school groups. So definitely check out your child's high school, see if maybe they can join in the club, because it's a wonderful opportunity. We've got one more question that's in the chat box, and this is asking, are there any examples of organizations that maybe make accommodations for volunteers with disabilities?
Another good question. And I think, again, I hate to keep saying it depends, but it really does depend. So it depends on the type of activity, and depends on the population they serve and what their needs are. And so again, it's a matter of finding what is important to you, and then connecting with those agencies and talking to them and having a conversation about that. Obviously, if you're doing a drive or you're doing something at home that you have those accommodations already at home, But when you actually go on site, then it becomes a little bit different. On our site, you can, an agency can put on there whether an opportunity is family friendly or wheelchair accessible. And so you can always sort by those as well, but it depends on whether or not the agency has marked that when they created the need. But again, ever in doubt, contact them directly and just have that conversation with them and talk about what your accommodation should be or what they look like. And you know, I'm sure they're willing to work with you.
That is great. Okay, we have hit 12:30, so it is time to wrap it up. Thank you both for that wonderful presentation and all that information. And we've had some really great questions from that. And it sounds like people are going to be directly reaching out to both of you. So I will share Kathy and Val's information in an email after the presentation to all of you who viewed it. It's also in the chat box right now if you want to copy that and save it. If you'd like to join us again for another presentation, we've got one coming up May 6th, where we're going to go through the steps to repairing drywall. It is not something you're going to want to miss. This is going to be a great presentation. I know I learned quite a lot when I was preparing it. So if you want to sign up for that workshop, you can go to our website, loudounhabitat.org/toolsforlife. And you can also check out all of our recorded workshops, just like this one, which will be up next week for you to go back and rewatch again if you need some more information. So with that, I want to thank you all for joining us, and we really hope that you will come back and join us again soon.